The secret power of your birthday is the topic, and I'll let you figure out why I chose that topic. It'll be a mystery. Some of you know. However, one thing we all have in common is a birthday, which means everybody, we can agree about one thing. Everybody on earth has a birthday. How do you like that? There are not many things that we all can agree upon, but that we can because everybody is born, and everybody was born a particular day. It is true that our grandparents, I remember my grandmother and I remember others, never really remembered what birthday it was. My grandmother would always say she knew it was after a big snow in January, one of those type of things. I guess that there was a point where maybe people were more secretive, but the bottom line is everybody has a birthday, which means everybody has the moment, the day that we emerged on this earth. Now there are many, we all look in life for resources, for assets, for powers in order to deal with life's struggles. Life has many challenges, and they that are posed to us on a daily basis. Some are easier to handle, some are not that easy. And of course we look for tools. We like to have a good arsenal, a tool chest of, I don't want to call it weapons necessarily, but we'll say it's instruments and tools to be able to deal with various issues we deal with. And at times we feel sometimes inadequate where we don't have the tools or the instruments or the methodology. But as there often is the case, that often that our greatest assets are right near us and we're not even aware of it. You can have a resource that can be a very powerful one and you may not even know it exists. And the reason for that is because we don't always look right inside ourselves and we can't always see what's inside of ourselves. Like, what potential do you really have? At times we find that we're faced with a particular challenge and we didn't even know it, and we rise to the occasion and suddenly you find and discover new strengths that you never imagined you had, which frankly is most of our discoveries in life are quote-unquote accidents like that. They don't come planned, they come based on a circumstance. Suddenly there's a crisis, a challenge, a difficulty, an impediment, you're faced with something you didn't expect. That's what experience is. The word experience comes from basically the trial and error of life. And often we do learn that we have strengths that we could never have imagined. That should tell you that how many other strengths do we have within us that we also you have yet to discover. So just as a lesson in its own, even without getting into the details of this discussion in this class, the lesson always is there's never room truly for resignation and for fatalism and for hopelessness, because just use your common sense. We do not know everything we have inside of us. So to make a suggestion, I can't deal with the situation, you can say, I don't know how to deal with it. But you cannot make a statement that I don't have the resources. You can say, I don't know how to access them, I don't know where they are. And indeed, as I said, we have no idea what our potential really is like, because no one's ever dug into your innermost psyche or soul and what powers we truly have. The Kabbalists and the Hasidic masters describe a person's faculties in terms of multidimensional, meaning what we're aware of are our what's called in Hebrew koiches gluyim, our revealed faculties. What does that mean? Let's start at a very basic level. You have your eyesight, you have your power of hearing, power of smell. I'm beginning with really the most rudimentary senses, our five senses, and the power of eyesight. Even if you have 20/20 vision, there's a certain limitation what you could see, what you can't see. You can't see through a wall, for example. You can't see around a corner. But good vision gives you a good eyesight. If you don't have that good vision, what do? Is you get corrective lenses, as some of us have, that helps supplement that which is lacking. Same thing with our hearing, the same thing with other. These are very called revealed faculties, which pretty much can be measured and tested. How good is your hearing? How good is your sight? How good is your sense of smell? And the other senses. The same is true with our other faculties. Intelligence, for example. There's a certain revealed amount of intelligence, whether it's an IQ test, if you believe in that, or this type of test or that type of test. Some people have, for example, strengths very well in deductive reasoning, for instance, very analytical. Others are extremely good in a certain intuition. Some people are very good at the physical sciences like mathematics, physics. Others are far better with the what called emotional sciences. So people have different types of intelligence, which too can be measured based on observation. So all remember, conscious, revealed experiences in our faculty. And down the list, whether it's our mind, whether it's our emotions, whether it's our other skills that we have that are either inborn, meaning innate from birth, or things we've developed, they can be measured to a certain extent because these are revealed to yourself and to others. The power of, for example, communication. You can see communication, some people are better communicators than others. There are many things you can learn to be a better communicator. Anyway, I think I explained enough. That's called what we call revealed faculties. Then they go talk about the next dimension, which is called koiches nalamim. These are hidden faculties. Hidden faculties means you don't see it, but it's the potential. Like, for example, let's say you're a writer, and you've written a book, or you've written articles, or essays, or communications of what sort. We all know that if you can write one article, you can probably write another article. Question is, how much potential do you have? See, even though we're aware of measuring what you're capable of what you've done rather, what's consciously revealed, but how much lies behind that's potentially there. And we, of course, know potential is always greater than actual. That's a mathematical fact. So, but what type of potential we're not really aware of. So that would be koiches nalam, would be essentially, for example, let's say you threw a stone, you can throw a stone 100 feet. Is that your capacity? Or maybe if you trained yourself, you could end up throwing it 200 feet. You can lift 100 pounds of weight, 200 weights. You can run 5 miles. But we all know with conditioning, you suddenly can learn to run 10 miles, and 15 miles, and 20 miles. There will be a limit. Even with all the conditioning in the world, a human being is, after all, a human being. So two people conditioned the same way, one may have naturally more muscle tone or muscle power than another. Same thing with brain power. So now we're talking about beyond the actual, which is what we actually right now can measure, the way the capacity of your mind, or the capacity of your senses, or the capacity of other strengths we have. There's now also the next step, which is what are you capable of? And we all know that we're always capable of more than what we have. So I just gave physical examples. Let's say I said, it may take conditioning, it may take training, but you could always do more than what you're doing right now in any given area. So where is that coming from? Why is that not obviously revealed? Because it comes from something that's somewhat beneath the surface. It's like saying you may drive a car at, let's say, 60, 70 miles an hour, but it has horsepower to go 180 miles an hour. Now, you may never use it, but it has that ability. Same thing with humans. It's harder to measure in those type of numbers, but whatever we have, you can rest assured there's more that has not yet been accessed. So that again is already very life-affirming. It means you always have more than what you think you have, or what's visible, let's put it that way. Then comes the next dimension, and this obviously as you go deeper in, it gets more complicated and more subtle and harder to fully understand. And the next would be called koiches atzmim. Now, what are koiches atzmim? In Hebrew, atzmi means essential. These are already not just hidden faculties, but these we're talking about now are faculties at their core level. And let me just give an example. I remember, I'm sure everybody remembers in their class, you had classmates. Some people were just smarter, literally had more brain power than others. And they usually were the ones that were, they picked up things quicker and, sure, okay.
I like a book you wrote. I'll take a picture of you.
Okay.
I'm with you after.
There you go. Yeah. A book is not, a person is not always as good as the book they wrote. Just remember that.
Sometimes better.
Sometimes better. That's true. So for example, so in all classmates we have in school, people who have literally just born with more intelligence, or I guess I don't say intelligence, I would say with more brain power, ability to pick up quicker, and so on. But then there are students, and I remember a few very well in my class in my young years, where they didn't have such, their minds may not have been as good as some others, but they really worked hard. They exerted themselves, they strained themselves, and with time, they became, in many ways, surpassed even people with better minds. Why? Because a mind is just, as I said before, it's not just what you have, it's also what you can access. And a person may have, you may have a person, as I said, that one person may be able to have their muscles, if they conditioned and trained themselves, would be able to run, let's say, a 20-mile marathon in a shorter period of time than someone who has weaker muscles. But if that person is more conditioned, they can run faster and longer than someone with less conditioning, even though the former one with the more muscles may have more power, but they didn't access it. So what does exertion do? What does effort do? What does training do? It can actually access powers that may not be revealed. That's on the hidden level. But then there's a place, as I said, the third dimension is we're talking now getting like to the core. Think of it like getting to the core where the energy source, the mouth of the well of where these faculties originate from in the spirit, in the soul. And that requires a lot more effort, obviously, and a lot more, a certain, say, commitment to be able to access that power. Now, there's more levels, but I just don't want to go, it's not the theme of this discussion here, that's why I didn't want to go into all the levels. There are another 2 levels that I didn't mention, but the bottom line is our soul, or some call it our psyche, has tremendous amount of power. As it travels from the superconscious, which means the innermost regions and the innermost recesses of our soul, to the outer, obviously the power gets diminished, like it is with anything. If you think of, let's say, an eruption of a volcano, you can rest assured whatever's happening on the surface within the core of the volcano is far more turbulent and far more powerful. So we see, if you go to Yellowstone Park, you see the geysers, or you see other expressions, whether it's a volcano eruption or it's a geyser or any other thing. What we see is just the surface of what's really happening far beneath the surface. So essentially, think of ourselves, our faculties are the same thing. What you see in a person's behavior and the way they function is what you see on the surface. Then, if you go a step beneath the surface, we call them the concealed faculties. But concealed can be concealed, and it's just not revealed today, but tomorrow you can see it. It's just a matter of, it's like something is concealed in a box, and you open up the box and you see there's more power to it. But then there's a level that's concealed that you actually can't even access it directly, because it's not like just hidden and you have to reveal it. I'll just give an example. One of the examples given in Hasidic literature is the difference between a hot coal and a flintstone. Okay, a hot coal, as you know, a coal that is that you see is blazing, or has been, you could see it's red and fires are coming. But sometimes you see hot coals, and if to an untrained eye or someone who doesn't know, it may even look burned out. It may have already been after. Sometimes you can't tell the difference between very hot coals, white hot coals, and coals that have already burned out, unless, God forbid, you touch it or you fan it. So where's the flame in those hot coals? The answer is it's concealed. It's there, and it's contained within the coals. If you fan it, or you get closer to it, you feel that heat. And in many ways, that heat can be even more than a coal that is ablaze, a coal that is clearly a red coal or something that you see. Now, a flintstone is different. A flintstone, even if you fan it, you're not going to get anything out of it. A flintstone, you have to strike it. You strike it hard, and it elicits a spark. And that spark actually can light a fire. So if you try to open up the stone, you're not going to find any sparks. If you touch it, you're not going to get burnt. As a matter of fact, you can put a flintstone in water, and it doesn't extinguish the capacity for it to give off sparks. A hot coal you put in water, it burns out. So there you have like 3 dimensions. You have a coal, a fire, open, revealed fire. That would be like the revealed faculty. The hidden power is that which is there, but it's just not obvious right now, but it's right there beneath the surface. And then there are powers that are called those that are so within in the core, they're not even in any form or fashion yet any type of flame. But if you strike it, if there's a crisis, or if there's any other type of serious exertion, you can access even those powers. So it's fascinating if you think about it, because then we could basically have a model, a formula for educating and training people. You begin with what you have, what you see you have. You can always assess a person's conscious revealed faculties. Then you work on trying to help a person fan the flame, so to speak, and discover what is beneath the surface. That doesn't require a lot of effort. And then there's what requires a lot of effort, which is the exertion, or the equivalent of striking the flintstone. And that can be a crisis, that can be also exertion. Strong effort. I mean, like when you struggle through something, We all know when you're reading something or researching, or you have to prepare a paper, or in school or whatever it may be, or a presentation at work, there are times you really struggle and it's really difficult. So we all think, I wish it wasn't so difficult, but frankly, the difficulty is like striking the flintstone. It actually elicits the capacity to reach into the core, and we all see, and I have this experience on a daily basis almost, because when you're writing, you're always in this situation where there's frustration, you don't have the total clarity, and so on. The exertion, the thing we hate most, which is all that effort, and even the confusion that precedes clarity, ends up creating a crystallization that you can never reach without that exertion. The equivalent of reaching sparks in the flintstone. So basically, essentially, it's like another expression used sometimes is coming from Hanukkah, is a fitting expression of pressing an olive, and therefore eliciting its oil. You can't get the oil without pressing it. So bottom line, there are things that are at the surface that you can access. There are things that need a little effort, and then the things need a lot of effort. And that a lot of effort reaches deeper into your soul's powers. So if someone were to ask you, or to me or anyone, what are you capable of? You could at best say, I know what I've accomplished, or what I think I can accomplish, what I do right now. But we don't know necessarily what's going on in the hot coal that is not so revealed, and definitely we don't know what's going on in the Flintstone dimension, where it's so hidden that you need to strike it. You cannot dissect it and say it's there. And that's why we do indeed find, as I mentioned, situations in life will challenge you. If you don't retreat and you don't shy away in fear, they challenge you, can help you, what they call rising to the occasion. You suddenly see a person has capacities and abilities that were not obvious before. And you wonder, where did it come from? It was there, but it required a strike. It required either a crisis, a challenge, sometimes a competition. There's an expression, kinas sofrim tar b'chachma, sometimes healthy competition, like an academic competition, where there's let's say, an essay competition or other forms of competitions. So when you have someone that you is challenging you, it'll push you further. And the same is even true in sports and athletics and so on. You hear it all the time. The greatest players, they'll always say, it was my opponent that made me greater, because I kept losing. So I had to dig deeper. And if you don't have an opponent like that, you'd never reach necessarily that capacity. So overall, this introduction that I'm beginning here, the bottom line is we have more resources than we ever think we have. But often, because we're subjective, and we have blind spots, and we therefore can convince ourselves, no, I'm weaker than I really am. That's why it's important to have a friend, a mentor, someone objective that can say to you, you have more than you think you have. And that's what good coaches are. What's a good coach? They don't create anything for you. A coach cannot turn a stone into a piece of wood. And a coach can't take someone that doesn't have the capacity to do something to have the capacity. Can take the talent that you have and accentuate it and amplify it. Learn the good methods. Learn good habits. Learn the right routines. Build confidence. These are all forces that are necessary, but they don't necessarily directly give you that particular strength. You have that strength, and a good coach, even a good parent, a good educator will recognize that. If we're lucky in life and we went through and we had a good teacher or mentor that recognized a skill that we may have had, they may have changed your life because they helped you recognize it and they helped foster it and build the confidence and tell you to work on it. Sometimes we don't have that. On the contrary, we sometimes have detractors, the naysayers, the people who are always telling us you're not capable. Those are doing the exact opposite. They cause us to have lack of confidence and invalidation, and you don't even try anymore because you feel you're going to fail. So all this is a process which is not, if you think about it, it's a lot of common sense. The big difficulty is it's always easier to help others than to help yourself. You often criticize others. You can give people better. How many times have you given others advice that you yourself don't even take? We're all guilty of that. So welcome to the club. And that's not because we don't have the capacity, but we're blinded when it comes to ourselves. We don't see ourselves clearly. And if you want a good example, I always use this example because I always find it amusing. I have a lot of recordings, videos, audios, and so on. Till this day, I still don't like to hear myself on recording. When I hear myself, I say, I don't know how anybody can listen to this guy. Do you ever hear yourself a recording? Very few people. I guess anchor people and singers and others are forced to keep hearing themselves till they really perfect it. But the first time you hear yourself in a recording, what does it sound like to you? It doesn't sound like me. But that's the voice everybody hears. You're the only one who doesn't hear it because your diaphragm or whatever it is like, you hear your own voice not the same way that others do. Even though you have ears, but I guess you're hearing it like coming from here more. Like, I'm not sure the analysis of it. But one thing is for sure, it doesn't sound like what you think it would sound like, right? I was just listening to myself today. I had to make some notes of something. So I was listening, and I had to cringe. What can I say? I'm plenty self-confident. Don't worry about that. It's not the problem. It's just we don't see ourselves and we don't hear ourselves as others hear us. That's the bottom line. It's just an example that we're subjective, and that's what So point being is this: that we have a lot more than we think we have, and it's right there beneath the surface of your own being. You don't have to go to any store. You don't need any program. You don't need any class, including this one, to discover that. What a good class can do, well, like a good coach, a good teacher, a good inspiration, is can help you find the tools to access those resources. And as I said, the methodologies and good habits and the routines. And, of course, some objectivity that you're capable of really accessing, but not just accessing, sustaining access to it. Now, this is a long introduction to the topic of birthday. Why did I give this introduction? Because a birthday is maybe one of the best kept secrets. Your birthday, which once a year comes around. Many of us enjoy our birthdays. I have to be honest, there are people who don't. There are people who hate their birthdays. It's usually, unfortunately, sad. If you hear someone does not like their birthday, it's usually a sign of some form of abuse in their lives. Why would they hate their birthday? Because their birthday was a day where either they were reminded of by parents who didn't want them, who hurt them. It was a time when sometimes many people people who've been hurt will say, my birthday was the worst day of my life because everybody made believe like I was special, but they didn't treat me that way all year round, and I was supposed to pose for pictures and get gifts, that everything should look picture perfect. But beneath the surface, it was not that way at all. And some people have the same attitude to holidays and generally going home. But I'm just mentioning it simply to qualify. I want to address those that may find their birthdays not very meaningful or very pleasant. But as I shall discuss, I think everybody, even those of us that may hate their birthdays, it's like hating yourself if you hate your birthday, to be very honest. And just because others hate you, you don't need to start hating yourself. But we'll talk more about that shortly. So a birthday is a gift. Even without birthday gifts, the birthday itself is one of the greatest assets we have. And I'll explain why. But as I said in the introduction, it's like those assets that they're not obvious. Most of us would think a birthday, okay, it's a nice day. To me, it's special. To people who love me, it's special. Once a year, everybody remembers that I'm around, hopefully. Send me gifts, birthday cards, different greetings, etc., etc. But there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Because essentially, if you think about it, a birthday is really the moment and the day that you emerged from your mother's womb into this world. Now, you could say, well, what's the big thing about that? That's just a circumstantial, whatever thing that happens. Everybody at some point emerges. But that's not the case. That's not how Judaism, and especially the mystics, see it. Because events like that are major. If you think someone says to you, what's the most special events of time in your life? So many people will say when they made a lot of money, when they found someone they love, they fell in love the first time. Different birthdays, not everybody will say is my special moment. Everyone will say, yes, I have a birthday. But would that be the most special moment? But the fact of the matter is, if you think about it, everything begins then. Your journey on this earth begins on your birthday. So is that a small matter? That's like the beginning of everything. If you could understand that point of departure, maybe everything else would be put into context. So the way to phrase it would be like this. The day you were born is the day when heaven and the cosmos determined that the world cannot exist without you. That's a very different way of looking at it, as just as someone popped out on earth. Or, as I put it in my book, you mentioned my book, you're talking about Torah Meaningful Life? Mm-hmm. Okay. So in Torah Meaningful Life, I have a chapter on birth, and in the beginning there's a quote. The quote is, birth is God saying, you matter. So if you think of it that way, it's a whole different story. It's not just some type of little thing. it's essentially the validation, the affirmation. The first time when you came to this world, first time when you were born, is when the world was given a gift called you. And it was very deliberate and very intentional. It's not an accident. So it isn't just a celebration of your parents who had a new child. And it's not just a celebration for family and for yourself. It's actually the whole universe celebrates. That's the way Jewish thought looks at the birth of every human being. Because it sees a human being, as the Bible puts it, as created in the divine image. We're not just another little detail. Created in the divine image. And that you play a role, an indispensable role, in this world, and have an indispensable mission that you and only you can accomplish. And that's what your birthday is saying. That mission began the moment you were born. The moment you were conceived, the process began, but you were not yet functional then. You were not yet an independent entity until the moment when the umbilical cord is cut. And I know many of us have to cut that umbilical cord many times in our lives, figuratively speaking. But on a physical level, when you become an independent entity that breathes and eats and drinks on its own, even though you're still a vulnerable child, is your birthday. And the second thing that's important to remember, that in Jewish thought, the mystical thought, I've mentioned this many times, time is not linear. Which means sometimes you hear the river of time, past, present, future, like a river. And the mystics explain that time is actually more like a cycle, or I should say even more accurate, a spiral. So a spiral means time it goes on an axis, and every year, when your birthday comes back to your birthday, it's not just you remembering you were born 10, 20, 30 years ago, whatever one's age is, but actually that moment goes back to the point in time, the point on that axis, in that cycle, in that spiral, when you were born, when everything is renewed. It's like the renewal of your mission then. So a birthday isn't just a commemoration, it's actually a recreation. And that's the same is true for the record for holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, or any holiday. A holiday isn't just remembering something that happened. But every year Passover, or for that matter Purim, or Hanukkah, the events that happened the first time are happening again. They may not be happening in the physical sense of it, but spiritually, whatever happened then is happening now. So on a person's birthday, all that energy, all the cosmos that made the decision that you should be here on earth, they all renew your contract. So the birthday, therefore, is literally every year that same celebration. It's recreating and revisiting that same point in energy and time when you first were born. That's why a birthday is more than just a commemoration. It's actually a recreation of, a repeat of, obviously on a different axis of the spiral, but the same point. And that's why it has that type of power. As a matter of fact, I'll mention at the end again, we recently developed a birthday kit. We call it a birthday guide, gift, which if you give me your birthdays, I'll be happy to send to you as my gift to you, and how to understand what a birthday is and how to make it more meaningful. But we'll talk about that again more at the end. But there's some of the ideas that I share here. So you don't mind afterwards? So that's right there. I don't know if whether it's today or tomorrow or coming up, or, at some point you will have a birthday. That I know. So the question is just to know what day it is. So going back to the birthday, therefore, if you think of it that way, birth is God saying you matter. So I can't resist to share this story because it's such a powerful story that really captures it. It's actually, unfortunately, through a tragic experience, but nevertheless, sometimes sad events help illuminate for all of us the power of what birth is. So this is a story that I've written and spoken and probably told, I don't know, maybe hundreds of thousands of people have heard it from me over the years. After my book Tour to Meaningful Life was published, so the publisher, William Morrow, sent me on a book tour across the country. The tour was for 20 cities, then it became 40 cities, and it ended up being 90 cities. So I paid my dues, shall we say. I've been around, almost like a presidential candidate now that I think about it. Had I known, I could have run for president. You don't need to have an office in every state to win, right? That's been proven. I'm fine. That's just a joke. Don't get afraid. I'm not doing that. Anyway, so one of the cities I ended up was St. Louis, Missouri. And I spoke there, I remember it was a Monday evening. And it was a particularly large crowd, not because of me, frankly, but because that was the night that in the JCCs all across the United States, they all designated that night to be Memorial Night for Prime Minister Rabin, Yitzhak Rabin, after he was assassinated. So that night, that's how I remember the night. And there were maybe 2,000 people who came to the evening, and many stayed because of my talk, but because they came for that. But that, since I was the speaker, that which was pre-scheduled, and maybe it was in order to get this story, to make this encounter that took place. After I get back to New York, I received a letter from one of the people in attendance at that evening in St. Louis. And the letter is etched in my soul till this day, so I can say it to you almost verbatim, which I will. The letter said like this: Dear Rabbi Jacobson, I was one of the people in your audience and when you spoke in St. Louis, and I want to share the following. I'm a 47-year-old executive that works in a prominent firm here in St. Louis, and well-respected, wealthy, well-connected. By all measures and accounts, I am definitely a success story. Well, that's what everybody thinks. But the truth is, beneath the veneer of my success lies a woman in shreds. These are her words. You see, my soul was murdered when I was a young child due to the abuse I endured in my home. And she's explicit, says this: psychological, emotional, sexual abuse that killed my soul. And not once, but every day, keeps killing it. And it's messed up my entire life. Relationships don't work. Intimacy is always unhealthy. I don't trust. I constantly test people. They test me. It's a mess. I've tried different types of therapy. Nothing has worked. What do people like me do? People who lose inner control of their lives, so they create outer control. I became super ambitious and driven and competitive and aggressive and made it on the so-called the business, corporate, financial level, executive level. But it really doesn't do much. It just somewhat numbs the pain. And I've long given up hope. So what I do is I just breathe in every day and just take day by day. Often I feel suicidal, but I just take it day by day, and that's how I live. I don't really share this with anyone. I don't talk about it. But someone gave me a copy of your book, Toward a Meaningful Life. I'm Jewish, but unaffiliated. I never go to synagogue. I have no affiliations. One of the reasons is also because of what I grew up with. And I was just browsing. I was leafing through the book, and a line jumped out at me in the chapter on birth. The line was, birth is God saying you matter. That was the line. And I read it again. Birth is God saying you matter. And I read it a third time. Birth is God saying you matter. And suddenly, 47 years it took me to get to this point. Like a silver bullet between my eyes, something resonated, touched a very deep chord in the deepest part of my soul that told me that despite what others say, despite what my parents told me, that I'm an accident, and reminding me how I'm miserable and how I'm worthless and I'm just a pain to them. Despite what they did to me, despite what society tells us, that our value is no more than a statistic on someone's balance sheet, and that our value is based on our looks and youth and buying power and equity and performance. Probably added a few more things I don't even remember. Despite all that, I matter to the one that matters most. That's God. The mere fact that God put me on this earth, I was born in the world. That alone is a vote of confidence that God said, I want you, I need you, you're indispensable. So no matter whether I accomplish something that day, whether I perform, whether I live up to someone's expectations, it doesn't matter. That's the only thing that matters. And then she concludes, and you can call this eloquent if it weren't under the circumstances. She writes, so though I have many years to heal, but for the first time in my life I have hope. Because I know what I need to do now. I need to bypass surgery to bypass the infected arteries that were so polluted and injured by the abuse I endured, and reconnect to that pure moment when I was born, that pure moment like freshly fallen snow, when God said, "You're my child, I love you unconditionally, I need you, and you matter." And then she concludes, "So thank you for giving me back my life." This is the letter. Almost 20 years ago. Now you could imagine, and even when I say it now, same feelings I had when I first read it, I was like so emotionally overwhelmed by it. I was crying, and firstly, complete strangers never met me, sharing such a sacred trust, and I actually went back to the book, to be honest, to read the chapter, because even though I wrote it, but a book, once you write it, it belongs to the readers, not to the writer. Readers read as they see what they have to read, what they read into it. So I wanted to see it from her eyes. So obviously I read it with a different type of feeling. That line, I mean, I know where I took it from and I know what I meant, but till you see it, how it really saved a person's life, I mean, that's pretty awesome and humbling. I wrote her back, of course, a note offering my help and support in any way. I asked her permission to tell the story, which she gave me, and she told me not to mention her name. And we still stay in touch. 20 years later, she's, and she asked me not to give her name because she says, "I'm sure other people have similar stories. They may want to contact me and they want to help me and so on. I don't need that." And of course, I respect that, and that's fine. And she still struggles. It's not like it's all solved, but she does have a plan, and it works for her. And she's no longer this woman in shreds, as you put it, that she's no longer a murdered soul because she's discovered her purpose. And she's still successful in her way, but she's discovered something. And this letter, as I said, besides sharing it, it's always haunted me, frankly. And since it haunted me, and I'm a speaker and a writer, I make sure it haunts others as well. That's what you do, And what do I mean by haunted? Because it struck a chord in me as well. I started thinking to myself, and I started asking myself and people that I meet, and I ask you the same thing. Do you think you matter? So firstly, it's always encountered that question. People chuckle and they snicker or whatever it is. Of course I matter. I have a healthy ego. I have plaques on the wall in case you need proof. I have family that says I'm adorable and I'm great. I did this, I did that. We all have our accomplishments. Real, imagined, doesn't matter. So people, what do you mean? Of course I matter. So then let me rephrase the question. If you were never born, would it make a difference to anybody? Would it have made a difference to anybody? Now that's a very different question. Once we're born and once we exist, it's called circumstantial value, then of course we figure out ways to justify our existence. But if you were never born, remember, it wouldn't be a tragedy if you didn't appear because no one's expecting you. So it's not like something's missing. It's once you're here, you try to make your life meaningful, and many people do. I'm not taking that away. But on a cosmic level, do you absolutely matter? 7 billion people on Earth. What would really be different if you didn't exist? Even very arrogant people have difficulty answering that one. And then I've seen people become uneasy when I ask this question, because then you start wondering. And I can tell you, people have told me, well, you put it that way, I don't know if I really matter on that level. On a cosmic level, on an indispensable level, I matter to my circle, my sphere of influence, my family, friends, workers, people I contribute to in one way or another. And many people say, I'm not sure I matter on that level. Or actually, some people have said I don't. My point is not to make anybody uncomfortable. My point is just to drive the point, to make a point. And I said to myself the same question. I said, look, I'm the oldest of 5 children. Okay? So I'm the first child of my parents. And of course, a first child is often a little more spoiled than the others, as my siblings will testify to. As I always say, the advantage of being firstborn is you don't have to go to therapy for your siblings, but they may have to go because of you. I don't know if that's a positive or negative, but whatever it is. So yes, do I matter because my parents told me they love me and have pictures of me and they cuddle me and they whatever they do, parents do. Is that why I matter? And if that's the case, then one day, let's say, God forbid, my parents wake up and decide I'm not that valuable, so what, my stocks go down based on their mood? So I'm not taking away. Parents can validate our value, but is that our value is based on that? This woman in St. Louis didn't have that luxury. She did not grow up in a home where she had that validation or nurturing and so on. And that's why for 47 years she had no clue. On the contrary, she thought she had absolutely, not only didn't she matter, she thought she was a complete loser, failure. She loathed herself. But because of that, she came to a truth that I did not come to and that many of us don't come to. They say the eclipse of the sun reveals a part of the sun that sunlight does not reveal. It reveals the corona, the core. Because she was eclipsed, and she did not have parents and a community and family educators that gave her value, she came to the deepest truth of all, and that was that we matter not because our parents are good to us or because people tell us we matter. Because as I said, that can fluctuate. We matter because God, the creator of it all, put us here, chose that you be here. And that nobody can take away from you. You know why? Because no one gave it to you. Not your parents, and not your workers, and not anyone on earth. Now, healthy parents will validate that, will confirm that, will reinforce that. But they don't create that. Unfortunately, they have the power to convince a child that the child doesn't matter, even though God created them. But she came to that clarity. And I wrote to her this once. I said, I want to thank you because I don't envy, and I'm sure you would prefer to have not have to come to this so-called truth, and just have had it naturally from parents and family and environment that would have supported that. But the fact is you come to the real truth, and that is the truth. And then I started developing my own little theories that maybe the drive for ambition, the drive for success that many of us have is because maybe somewhere in our subconscious we have a fear, an existential fear we don't really matter. So we're constantly doing things to say, I'm important. Look at this and look at that. And I'm not saying all those things are bad things. Some things are really good. People do things that help the world. But maybe it's somewhat of coming from a place because, do I really matter? But I'll leave that. That's a theory. I'm not going to suggest that every drive for ambition and success is based on that, even though I lean toward thinking that way. So you think about it, you see then birthday takes on a whole new shape. That's why I shared the story, because the story really captures, I think in a very raw and very primal way, what the power of a birthday is. Your birthday is the day when everything in your life has begun. There's nothing you do on this world, any second, that did not begin at the moment you were born, because that's when your journey began. If you were not chosen and your soul was not sent to this earth, your whole life would not exist. And it was chosen because, yes, you have something unique to contribute that you and only you can contribute, which is what explains why no two people are alike. No two people look alike, even siblings. No two people have the same personality. No people think alike. This is a Talmudic statement. Why? Because we're not clones. I remember this day my son came home from school. He was a little kid. He was so excited. He excited me. Today I remember it. He doesn't. That's how it works. And he said to me, I said, why are you so excited? Mendel is his name. Actually, his birthday is tonight. Right? Tomorrow. And he said to me, he heard today a great line. That was, you were born an original. Don't become a copy. It's a great line, of course. We were born an original. Don't become a copy. And we become copies. In Robert Frost's memorable poem, The Road Less Traveled, that most people choose the road most traveled on. He says, and I, as he says, two roads diverged in the wood, and I chose the road less traveled. And that has made all the difference. Now, it's all very cool. People love to say, I'm an out-of-the-box person. I'm a nonconformist. I take the road less traveled. If that was the case, that everybody's a nonconformist, then there wouldn't be any real pioneers. The fact is, it's not the case. We like to think we're out of the box and we think we're originals. But the fact of the matter, much more than we may imagine, I've talked about this a few weeks ago, we're deeply influenced, more than anyone even knows, by what others expect of us, what others think of us, the fear of what they will say if I do or do that, or not do something. You don't have many people that have that complete independent spirit. And some that do are not necessarily healthy either. They maybe go overboard the other way. So it's not some thing that you find pioneers every day. Yes, in business you may find pioneers, but I'm talking about really, truly spiritual pioneers that have that type of, and they don't necessarily have to change the world, but they live by their inner voice, because they're completely affected by one thing and one thing only. What is the mission that God sent me to this world to do? If you know that, and you know that God is watching, and every second are you living up to that mission, then what the damn difference does it make what others think? To go look for other people are going to help validate whether you're fulfilling your mission. Now I know it doesn't make sense, but emotionally, as I said before, we're blinded. Emotionally we are dependent, and especially if we did not grow up in homes that cultivated that sense of self-confidence and self-esteem, we're always looking what others are thinking. I began writing a poem once. It was going to be a one-line poem actually, but repeated many times. I'm watching people, watch people, watch people, watch people, watch people, watch people, like that. In other words, always watching people, the blind leading the blind, to use Shakespeare's words. So, a birthday, therefore, I submit, is the greatest tool we have. That's maybe the greatest underused tool that we have. Because essentially, it's a statement that you have once a year declared, but the truth is, every moment you're alive is a result that you are being rebirthed. You wake up every morning is essentially a mini birthday. And that is that the contract that God is saying on a cosmic level, you have something to contribute, you have a mission that you and only you can fulfill. And it's critical to know that drives everything. Because if you're completely confident in that, then that defines because remember, if you don't really matter, then how can your choices and decisions and all your actions really matter? Which is what many people do have, that type of somewhat, it's a lingering, it's almost a subconscious feeling. It really matters what I do, don't do. It's like an ocean. Someone's going to drop another drop of water in the ocean, what difference will it make? They tell that analogy of a poor town, poor shtetl, and they heard the news that there was a great king, the great king of the whole empire was coming to visit this town of all towns. So all the poor people got together. We need to do something special for the king. What are we going to give him he doesn't have? He has everything. So they said he'll appreciate our gesture. So they decided they put a big barrel in the middle of the town, and everyone's expected to pour in a jug of wine. They had wine. Now wine was expensive, but that would be a gesture. Everyone a jug of wine, and together they give the king this great big barrel. And for the king would appreciate their effort and that they went out of their way, their expense relative to their economic status was a gift. Now, of course, there was a smart guy in town. He tells his family, he says, listen, wine's very expensive. It takes 3 months to make the money that we need for wine for Kiddush or Shabbos or holidays and so on. Since everyone else is going to pour wine into the barrel, we'll pour a jug of water. Who's going to know? Now, unfortunately, all the people in town were just as smart as this guy was. And they all said the same thing. So the king ended up getting a big barrel of water. Because everyone thought, what difference? One jug of wine, there's hundreds of other families. I'm sure they'll put wine. When you don't think you can make a difference, it affects everything. Someone says to you, here, we need you tomorrow morning, early morning, 7 a.m., 6 a.m., we've got to volunteer. We're going to visit some special children, or we're going to visit some sick people, and we need some volunteers. Okay. You'll say, 6 o'clock in the morning, please, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, had a hard week, whatever it is. I'm exhausted from not doing anything, which also can exhaust you, So the person who's invited you says, okay, listen, if you can't make it, you can't make it. How many people are going to go if they hear that? But if you're told the following, we can't do it without you. If you don't come tomorrow 6 a.m., people are going to not get what they need. We cannot do it without you. That's a different story. Then you feel you're needed. We live in a very increasingly depersonalized world where friends are Facebook friends. As they say, and this isn't even a joke, that the people who created social media are the most antisocial people you'll ever meet. I met some of them. But they created friends. So what kind of friends? The best friend, if you're an antisocial, who's a friend? Someone you never have to see. But you can share things online with. I know, it sounds funny, but I think it's somewhat true. This doesn't mean that you can't have a real friend and also have them friend on Facebook. But it means you can have friends that are not really friends. So we live in an increasingly depersonalized world. Then we have reality TV. Oh, you want some reality? We'll give you reality TV. That's reality. That's like someone says, someone's just taking a cup of Diet Coke. He says, how could you drink that? That's like fake. You have to have the real thing. What's the real thing? Real Coke. Like as if real Coke is real. It's also some chemical or whatever it is, It's also a fabric. It's not water. It's not bread. Or Walter Matthau, I think, put it this way. He said, you see this couch? It's authentic imitation leather. You hear? Authentic imitation leather. Okay, so I need any more jokes to make the point? It's pretty clear, right? So we live in a world where it's sometimes hard to know where the lines blur between reality and fiction, especially in the latest period of time. Television is like, it's an entertainment. Is it real? And you get older you come to realize that, best is probably to get inner stimulation from within and good friends. That all these outer stimulation may be very good distractions and excellent babysitters, but it ends up has nothing to do with reality, that's for sure. Reality is what goes on. Reality is a mother cradling a child and saying, you matter. That's reality. And everything else is secondary. Not even secondary, is meaningless. So when you get to come to, so you think about that, we live in this depersonalized, so it becomes very, very, we're addicted essentially to forces and to a diet of things that do not feed the most important thing, which is that you truly matter on the deepest level. We're not even encouraged to think that way. And especially when you add into the whole marketing, advertising world in which we live. We're being inundated with messages that if you buy this, you'll be a better person. If you smoke this, if you travel here, if you look like that, look, what do basically ads do? They're either telling you, here's how you get pleasure, or here's how you avoid pain. It's the pain and pleasure principles, as they put it. And that's what it is. When's the last time you see a big ad billboard that says, birth is God saying you matter. You're indispensable. Unless there's a bottom line that says call 1-800 so-and-so, you're not going to get such a message. Because why should anyone give you a message like that? How is it going to be monetized? How is it going to be sponsored? So it says, you're indispensable, call 1-800 and find out how. That's like the story, the Woody Allen joke, where the guy comes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I hear that the Torah has a secret to all the truths of life. Absolutely. I hear, can you teach it to me? Sure. How much will it cost? How could I charge you? God didn't charge Moses and the Jewish people. Moses didn't charge for delivering it. Wow. So he's doubly impressed, the truths of everything, and for free. Well, they sit down, and of course the Torah is in Hebrew. And the rabbi says, Hebrew lessons will be $20,000. Okay. So there's always a catch. There's nothing for free. But the truth is, that's a joke. It's actually not true. The truth is that you have, as I said before, the resource right in you. A birthday doesn't cost money. God gave it to you as a gift. He gave you life as a gift. Can you imagine? We value things more than the life itself that we're given. We value the clothing we buy, our hairdos, our makeup, our accessories. We value that more than the biggest gift you have, which is you. Because we live in a world that never talks about you and they don't celebrate you. They celebrate something that, to convince you that this will make you happy, and this will make you this, and this will do that, and this will make you diet, and this will make you, feel less depressed and less sad. Just look at everything that we are involved in. And I'm not saying everything is false, but no one ever says to you the biggest message, which is you are a divine entity in this world that has something to contribute that you and only you can contribute. That's a birthday, period. You don't even need more than that. Now, obviously the next question everyone asks is, okay, so how do I find that mission? Good, I love that. Who doesn't love to hear that they're indispensable? But tell me, what am I supposed to do? So the answer actually lies within the question. As they say, the question of a wise person is half an answer. What's the answer? If you're going to be completely controlled by all these messages and you don't have any space to think about your life, obviously you're not going to get very far. It's very nice to hear, to accept, okay, I'm indispensable, I've got a mission to say, but let me know in 10 minutes what am I supposed to do. And then the rest of your life, you're back to the merry-go-round and the circus and the rat race that we're all involved in. There's no way that you can embrace your mission and your calling based on your birthday if you're going to go back to the routines that so trap us, that have nothing to do with your life and your purpose in life. And that's the difficulty. If the message I shared here this evening was taught to children from young age, and every morning and every evening, but when they wake up and before they go to sleep, they were told, you were sent here, you're a gift. Mother and father and older siblings would say, you're a gift sent here by God, and you have something unique to contribute. And I'm here to help. I feel honored to be like a gardener, to help nurture and foster and cultivate your potential and your mission. We live in a very different world. But the message like that is not really heard by children. So now we're adults, and we have not heard that message. And we're adults that are already in a 90-mile-an-hour, we're driving 90 miles an hour. We're not like, you can't just stop everything, or at least we think we can't. I have a job tomorrow morning, that's very fine. I just saw a cartoon, a guy he's rushing to the train station with a briefcase. He sees a guru sitting in the corner there, and he goes over to the guru, listen, my train is in 8 minutes, can you tell me the meaning of life? That's not how it works. If everything else is a priority and the meaning of life is like, okay, fit it into 8 minutes between my coffee break and my this thing, obviously. So that's the difficulty. How do you break the routine? How do you create the space? But today you hear this is already mindfulness is in today. Every few years it's another name, but essentially it's about creating space. And we don't need any new gimmicks. You got to simply do this. If it's important enough, you create space. See, that woman in St. Louis didn't have all these luxuries. For her, life was miserable every second. So she was desperate. And when you're desperate, you do things. And she found her answer, but not easily. How do we, who are not so desperate, and we have our lives, at least we think we have our lives figured out, and we at least have some semblance of whatever structure, the only way is a sense of, I don't want to say the word desperation, that sounds very foreboding, but I will say you have to see it as a priority. There's no way around it. You're not going to be driving 90 miles an hour and expect to suddenly say, okay, what's my mission in life? You're going to have to pause. So we have a thing for Shabbat. That's meant to be a day where you do pause. And you do try to put a stop to, as much as possible, to the material life in which you're immersed. Your work, your routines. And that is a time when we're supposed to be thinking, meditating, praying, and focusing on those priorities. But what happens most people, Shabbos, even people who keep Shabbos, they bring their 6 days of the week into Shabbos, and they're so exhausted that finally I have at least I could rest a bit. They don't use it as a time to, basically it's a time of like a pause in this big marathon. So now instead of riding 90 miles an hour, I've paused for a day. But then you're back to the 90 miles an hour. There has to be some point where you stop and say, I have to do something about this differently. And that nobody can force upon you. That has to be a priority. Now, sadly, usually crisis, trauma, loss, and so on is the thing that jolts most people out of their routines because there's no choice. But I'm not suggesting we need to wait for that. It has to be that important. So a birthday is your gift, but you need to pay attention to it. It's not just, and that does not come with superficial commitment. It requires really thinking, but it's worth all the effort. You know why? Because it recalibrates your whole life based on your mission. Instead of your actions defining your calling should define your actions. Doesn't that make sense? Your mission statement should define your business, not your business defines your mission statement. So that is the challenge. But that's the power of birthday. So now you've heard it here, and no excuse anymore. You have in you right now, your birthday is your greatest gift. I know some people say, I'd rather you didn't tell me that. That way at least I can still continue saying, I didn't really know. But that's what it is. I remember years ago, it was a very amusing, humorous story. There's a young guy, a very successful, driven guy, came to this class, very smart, and he used to come every week. Then one day he calls me, he says to me, I've been coming to your class now for the last year and a half, almost every week. I really love it. It's changed so much how I look. But I have to tell you, because of your classes, I've lost my girlfriends. I've lost all the things, all this entertainment that I was so in. I was like, it's a hot shot. And your classes have forced me to go into places that I never think about. And really, my life has become a mess. I don't like going partying anymore. I don't like the superficial stuff. So I have to tell you, this was a serious call. that no offense to you, but you're not going to see me. I have still some young years in my life. Once I retire, I'll get back to you and introspective life. I need to get, this is what he told me. I couldn't stop laughing. I said to him, I think this is the most gratifying call I've ever received, I told him. And I said, why? He said, because I really feel great to make you miserable. And how many people can say, I feel great by making you miserable? Or they say, I make happy people miserable and miserable people happy. It's a good calling card. Good pickup line. So anyway, so I said, look, I'm not here to tell you what to do. Enjoy your life. I mean, literally, he said to me, I have, too much action still I need to do. But he recognized it. And I smiled to myself. I said, let's see what happens. Well, something around 4 or 5 months later, he shows up. And I didn't say names. I told the story. And I said, there's a guy, I don't know if I'll ever see him again. He was sitting there in the back. So I talked to him afterwards. He says, I couldn't stay away. It's impossible. He says, once you hear it, it's very hard. He says, I've been pushing it away. I have to find a way to balance the two. Anyway, at least the guy was honest, which I appreciated. But what he did was, I know what he did. He was a very good-looking guy. He was this sexy dude type of guy. And he says, he used to bring girlfriends that he was dating to my class here. It wasn't in this room then. We were in another place. So I said, why are you bringing this? Why are you doing that? He says, it's the best class. He said, because I would find out everything about them. Because afterwards, they either tell me, I don't understand all this stuff. And he knows right away that's not for him. But if they do, he says, you really find out a lot of what a person is about because you're forced to start talking about deeper things instead of talking about whether you like this movie or this restaurant or that restaurant or this music or that music. So anyway, it became a little tradition. Once in a while you'll see it. I don't know, today it's online, I think, so people more do it. Became a tradition. People started bringing their dates here. Men brought women, women brought men. I don't know. It became interesting twist because it was like a class that they provoke things. Provoke conversations. Instead of they have to provoke, I'm the one that provoked, and then they, I remember when Stephen Dubner, who helped me, he's an editor of Torah Meaning for Life, he went on to write Freakonomics, you may be familiar with that, with Stephen Levitt. So he would tell him, he actually wrote his own book later, Turbulent Souls, because he was the youngest of 8 children born to 2 Jewish parents who converted to Catholicism. It was a story. He was a New York Times writer. I don't know if you've seen it. So I remember when he was writing, I would send him my chapters and he would edit. So when we were working on the chapter on love and marriage, he said to me, "You're destroying my whole romantic life because nothing that I have in my life rises to these standards here, lives up to these standards." And he told me. Then later, when he married his wife, he asked me to say a few words. I said, "You know something? There's a man here, the man who's getting married, would not be marrying this woman had he not been working with me and discovered a higher standard for love and marriage." Anyway, that's so sometimes it's good to higher the bar, as they say. Raise the bar, right? Very good. Raise the bar, and that way our standards get higher. So sometimes a bit could be a little intimidating, but that's how you grow. Let's be honest. Growth comes with some type of angst. You want to reach greater places. So our birthday is unbelievable powerful. And as I said, let me know when your birthday is. You could write it down for me. We could also figure out when the Hebrew birthday is if you like. And we'll send you a gift from me to you, how to make your birthday more meaningful. It's like a guide. We made a very nicely designed thing, which I really think could really help people. I mean, some things I said here, there's more to it, of course. But remember, it begins with creating the space. And that's a good thing to do on your birthdays, to create that space so you can think about it and make some real resolutions, not like these New Year resolutions that last from January 1 to January 2, if that much. But something that really is sustained. And of course, having an environment, people that think like this. Because it's very difficult to be alone in this type of journey, of a meaningful journey, of a purposeful life. Because you have people around you and they're more superficial or they're involved in other things. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is not about, I'm not suggesting that you'll stop having fun and stop enjoying your life. I'm suggesting you could have all that plus a deeper dimension to it all. Just want to make that clear. So this isn't about moving from a happy-go-lucky type of life to complete intensity and seriousness. It's about deepening your, widening your horizons and broadening your perspectives, when then everything becomes enriched. And that's what it comes down to. So I'm sure more can be said, but I thought that an excellent way to look at a birthday and look at a resource that we have available, because we all have that birthday. And in fact, even when, as I said before, even when it's not the actual birthday, the truth is every morning when you awake, it's considered to be a mini birthday, because it's like a renewal of your contract and also appreciation of the life that you were given. So I don't know if anybody's birthday is coming up very closely, but if yes, I wish you a happy birthday. I'm sure there's somebody. But at some point, everyone will get to that point, that access, that place in the spiral, when all of existence lines up to look at you and your role, and yes, your actions and your choices and your behavior is critical and indispensable in the whole picture. The fact that there's 7 billion people on Earth, the fact that there are a lot of numbers does not take less of it, because as we know today, size doesn't matter. It's not about size. You can have a computer program with millions and millions of lines of code, and there's one dot missing, and the whole code doesn't work. You can have DNA. We have 75 trillion cells in our body, trillion. And one cell is a mutation, and it can create havoc. So it's not about 1 billions, 75 trillion. It's about the quality, and we do each have that beauty and that music and that song. And I always, Oliver Wendell Holmes in The Voiceless says, alas to those that die with their song still inside them. When you're born, a new song entered this world, a new melody. And unfortunately, that melody often remains undercover. And yes, some people die with the song still inside them. Your birthday is meant to remind you that you should not. You should access that song. And that song is more than just a song. It's a song, it's a symphony. And it's a symphony that goes through your whole life in all its colors and hues and shapes and forms. But it's yours, and it's your mark that you make, that yes, birth is God saying you matter. So everyone have a very blessed week. And you matter even now, not just on your birthday. It's all year round. It's just the birthday is the beginning of the contract. And we should all have a blessed week and blessed until next Wednesday. If I could be of any help, the Meaningful Life Center, that's what we're driven by. Birth is God saying you matter. Meaningful life. Please be in touch with us, and please do leave me your birthdays. Everyone online as well. If you just email us your birthday, I assure you that you'll receive a personal gift from me, from all of us, that can help make your special day even more special. Thank you very much. And I will give you the secret. My birthday was yesterday. What age? I'll let you figure that out. I feel 17, but as you can imagine, I'm not 17.